In a prehistoric world, there's a war waging between herbivores and carnivores, and the plant eaters are winning.
They seem to break all of the rules. There's nothing like them around today.
For these plant-eating giants, survival relies on a battery of weapons and defenses as impressive on the inside as they are on the outside.
A single blow from those horns could kill you.
Now, 65 million years on, cutting-edge imaging technology takes us inside their minds to reveal what the world's toughest defenders are made of. America during the Cretaceous period. Stalking the landscape are some of the most ferocious predators ever to inhabit the Earth. Carnivores have had to evolve into formidable hunters. It's the only way they can survive in this brutal world. The prey they hunt are the most well-armed, best protected animals in history. Herbivores of the Cretaceous are built to take on the biggest teeth and sharpest claws nature has ever produced. Ankylosaurus has armor designed like a bulletproof vest. Triceratops' horns can pierce the skin of a Tyrannosaurus rex. Parasaurolophus can detect a threat miles away. And a full-grown Sauroposeidon is a colossus too big to overcome.
These plant eaters are no pushovers. They're no pansies. We have records, quite a few, of adult dinosaurian predators being killed by herbivores. It did happen. It happens today. Lions get kicked in the face and die from a single blow from the rear end of a zebra.
Despite advanced defensive tools, being a plant eater during the Cretaceous is not easy.
These guys had to be able to deal with living in a world with sophisticated meat eaters.
There were raptors hunting you, there were tyrannosaurs hunting you, and there was death from the skies.
Death in the form of Quetzalcoatlus, a 180-kilogram flying carnivorous reptile. Or the raptor, Deinonychus, fast and lethal. It has a top speed of 60 kilometers an hour and claws that can slice through even the toughest hide. But there's one meat eater who tops them all.
Tyrannosaurus rex is the most awesome creature that has ever lived in the history of the planet.
The powerful jaws of Tyrannosaurus rex can bite down with 3 tons of force, twice the power of a saltwater crocodile. But the herbivores T-Rex hunts are worthy adversaries, and they fight back.
If there's an animal whose scent would frighten a T-Rex, it's Triceratops.
It represents what happens when you evolve something that can stand up to the power of Tyrannosaurus rex.
Triceratops is the most dangerous dinosaur, probably the most dangerous animal ever to have evolved on land.
This plant eater is a formidable creature. 8 meters long, 3 meters high, weighing up to 6 tons.
Triceratops is an amazing animal simply because it was absolutely enormous.
They had this big, massive body with a big gut. So, you know, we're talking of an animal that's maybe 4 or 5 tons.
A Triceratops is half as tall as a T-Rex, yet it weighs about the same. The difference is how that weight is distributed. Its back legs are straight, like a rhino. Its front legs splay out like a lizard. This design pushes its center of gravity towards its head, which weighs half a ton. Therefore, when a Triceratops stands its ground, it's rock solid, built for a direct frontal attack. This powerful head and shoulders protect a body covered in a hide so soft, a T-Rex could slice right through it.
Triceratops had this wonderful protective thing on the front of its head. It's got a frill that protects its neck, one of the most vulnerable places on the animal.
The frill is solid bone, 6 times thicker than a human skull. To foil an opponent, it's strongest at the edges. This frill forms an almost impenetrable shield, one able to repel the most powerful jaws the Earth has ever known.
The frill, the bone over the neck, is that thick. It's in several layers. And it's a composite armor. On top would be a thick layer of fingernail-like skin, almost impossible to bite through.
This 4-legged monster is well protected and dangerous.
Triceratops is heavily armed and heavily armored and can kill you.
For a Triceratops, power is everything. Sometimes they even take on members of their own species in a battle for dominance. Its primary weapon is a pair of meter-long horns mounted on its skull. These horns make those of modern creatures look lightweight. A rhino's horn is made of hair, an elephant tusk of ivory, but Triceratops' horn is constructed of solid bone growing directly out of the skull. Their horns, 30 centimeters wide at the base, are able to withstand up to 16 tons of force, strong enough to rip through the body of a car.
It is going to come at you, and it can move left, and it can move right, and can swing those brow horns and the nose horn at you in a great sphere of aggression. A single blow from those horns could kill you.
There's a reason Triceratops became the most successful plant eater of the Cretaceous, and why a predator thinks twice before attacking.
The irony for hunting is that the hunter is often more worried about their own welfare. They're actually concerned about injuring themselves in that process.
Any predator puts its life at risk every time it hunts. Even things like T-Rex.
A carnivore trying to bring down a defender like this relies on a stealth approach, a surprise attack, and nerves of steel.
One could imagine that the conflict between Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops may have been one of the greatest combats that nature has ever had. Here we have one of the greatest predators nature has ever produced and one of the greatest defenders nature has ever produced, sparring off with some truly awesome weaponry. There's nothing like that in the world today.
Triceratops' most effective defensive tool is one totally hidden from view. A ball and socket joint which connects its 450-kilo head to its neck. This joint gives Triceratops the ability to maneuver its head almost 360 degrees. This bone is the closest nature has ever produced to a perfect sphere. It allows movement in almost any direction. In a fraction of a second, a Triceratops can place its head directly between its body and threat.
It's like a gigantic white rhinoceros on steroids. Its head always faces you.
This unique adaptation, with its flexibility and maneuverability, is not found on any other dinosaur or on any mammal today.
You could imagine it being able to turn its head very rapidly, very quickly, one direction or another.
Rhino can't do that. Almost fencing with your horns that Triceratops could do.
Any fight is likely to end with a fatal blow.
On average, Triceratops killed T-Rex. Major mortality factor in T-Rex populations was this tank, this herbivorous tank.
Imposing bulk, strong, solid armor, and dangerous weapons all deliver the power to stand up to huge predators. But in the world of the Cretaceous, other defenders come equipped with tools not only to survive an attack, but to defeat an opponent. Ankylosaurus is a herbivore designed to kill. Hell Creek, Montana, 68 million years ago. Prehistoric plant eaters live every day with a target on their back. To avoid becoming dinner, they rely on specialized evolutionary adaptations. Internal armor, advanced designs, and armaments tougher than anything found on animals today.
These are animals that have defenses.
Herbivores do seem to be marvels of engineering.
Very dangerous, heavily armed, heavily armored targets.
A Triceratops can hold its own against almost any predator. With 3 horns and a bony shield, even a T-Rex keeps its distance. An Ankylosaurus is completely different. It may be a herbivore, but it has the tools to stop an attacker dead in its tracks.
Ankylosaurus was a walking tank, a massively armed and armored animal.
9 meters long and weighing 4 tons, Ankylosaurus's home is the American West.
Interesting thing about ankylosaurs, which makes them kind of cool, is that their pelvis has been modified so it's very broad. They have an enormous gut, and they were probably engaging in what's called fermentation digestion. And we see that in like cows and horses and whatnot, and they use bacteria to break down the cellulose in the material. The problem is that you probably would not want to be downwind of an ankylosaurus. It was probably just a stinking machine walking its way through the forest.
Digesting plant fiber is the hardest job in the ecosystem, and Ankylosaurus tackled that job, which is why it needed that enormous bulk, gigantic stomach, subdivided intestines, and that means you're slow. You're very slow. And you have to feed 12, 15, 18 hours a day, and you're vulnerable for most of the day, and therefore you have to have static armor.
Small and low slung, this vegetarian can not only survive a T-Rex attack, but sometimes it can even defeat one. Its first line of defense is a tank-like body.
Its primary form of defending itself might be hunkering down onto the ground, letting its armored body protect from the teeth and the claws of the Tyrannosaurus.
Ankylosaurus' specialized armor is designed to be strong and lightweight. Skeletal plates embedded in the skin are aligned in even rows down the neck, back, and hips. Spaces between the plates allow this bulky creature to move freely. While similar to scales found on today's crocodiles or alligators, the way these plates are constructed makes them much tougher.
Ankylosaurus has not 1, not 2, but 3 layers of armor, and the head so protected by thick bone that not even an adult female T-Rex could inflict a killing bite.
The plates are totally unlike the bones of mammals. They're made of crisscrossing layers of minerals and collagen, fibers made of protein that strengthen bone the way steel rods reinforce concrete. It's a design used today in bulletproof jackets. Interwoven layers can absorb the power of a piercing attack.
Ankylosaurus pretty much was not afraid of anything. because it would be very difficult to kill this beast.
This creature's armor protects something else as well. Its eyes. The eyelids of an ankylosaurus are made of bone.
Ankylosaurs are enormous. They didn't have legs. They didn't need to chase after their prey, the vegetation. It wasn't going anywhere. It was just there. They had these bone plates that had formed in its skin, and this is similar to what we see in crocodiles' armor on the back. Well, with ankylosaurs, they went even farther. They encased their entire backs, their sides, their bellies, even developed these bones in the eyelids so that it had armored eyelids.
But a body covered in steel-like armor is only the beginning. Ankylosaurus also has a powerful offensive weapon, its tail, a club that can pummel an opponent with 19 tons of force. The top half is composed of muscle. The vertebrae on the lower half are fused together to form a solid, rod-like whip. This tail can snap more than 45 degrees in either direction. At the very end is a bony mass, like a built-in sledgehammer.
A giant mace that's really well built for smashing into the heads or the legs of Tyrannosaurus and its relatives.
This tail is capable of enough power to shatter the leg bones of almost any predator, no matter how big.
An impact from that club could crush bone, shatter teeth, if not kill the T-Rex outright, wound it in such a way that it's likely to starve to death.
Like a wrecking ball weighing almost 45 kilograms, swinging at a speed of 78 kilometers per hour, it strikes a devastating blow. The tip is designed not to split on impact. It absorbs the stress of all that raw power. The hammer gives because it's not solid bone. Instead, it's honeycombed with soft tissue, marrow, blood, and fat. Ankylosaurus combines steel-like protective plates with a powerful offensive weapon. The result? A creature with few rivals over more than 100 million years of evolution.
Ankylosaurus represents the end of the history of the armored dinosaurs, the ultimate in dinosaurian tanks.
But some dinosaurs don't rely on body armor and weapons for defense. They have an entirely different strategy. Grow bigger. Much, much bigger. Montana, America. It's not called the Wild West for nothing. Hungry predators are everywhere. In response, prey develop an incredible array of defensive strategies. Strategies that don't rely on intelligence, but on physical traits. Sauroposeidon is a gargantuan beast growing to 50 tons or more.
Sauroposeidon was one of the largest animals that ever lived on land.
If you're gigantic, there are fewer and fewer predators that can attack you.
So getting big is the only game in town.
A fully grown Sauroposeidon is 19 meters tall and almost 30 meters long. Its neck alone is 4 stories long. A single vertebrae almost as tall as a grown man. And a single thigh bone weighs over half a ton.
They seem to break all of the rules. There's nothing like them around today.
Containing over 72 million calories of fresh meat, you'd think Sauroposeidon would be the jackpot for a bloodthirsty carnivore.
They don't have horns, they don't have armor. Really, the only anti-predator defense they have is sheer size.
And size does matter. When a Goliath like this is fully grown, even the most vicious predators keep their distance. Even the most ferocious raptor of the Cretaceous, Deinonychus. At 90 kilos, this raptor pales in comparison to its 50-ton prey.
If we're talking about a single adult Deinonychus and a single adult Sauroposeidon, the story would go something like this. Hi, I'm a Deinonychus. I'm a Sauroposeidon.
But for a Sauroposeidon, reaching full size can take years. To make things worse, fossil evidence shows that juveniles live alone, separated from the herd, until they reach at least a third of their adult weight. That means for nearly a decade, they wander the forest alone. And that forest is crawling with Deinonychus. Intelligent and well-armed, they hunt on their own or sometimes in packs. They run with a top speed of 65 kilometers per hour. These raptors can take on a youngster. For a young Sauroposeidon, there's just one solution: get big quickly. And that's going to take a lot of fuel.
The number one concern in life would be feeding the beast.
The land is covered in vast forests of ferns, pines, and monkey puzzle trees. Many of these plants have almost no nutritional value.
The hardest job in the animal world, the dinosaur world, was not T-Rex's job. Digesting meat is a piece of cake. It's very, very simple. Digesting plant fiber is the hardest job in the world.
To gain enough nutrients to grow indestructibly large, Sauroposeidon has to consume huge amounts of vegetation.
They were like walking vacuum cleaners.
If you've got 40 or 50 tons of flesh to feed and you eat low-quality food, you have to put away hundreds of pounds, maybe a ton of this stuff every day.
When growing is your best defense, gaining weight is serious business. So Sauroposeidon does away with time-consuming tasks like chewing.
If you could just swallow that stuff and let your giant stomach mash it up for you, you could move in a lot more food per unit time, and you could get a lot bigger.
Sauroposeidon's 52 chisel-like teeth are perfectly designed for the job. They can rake leaves and twigs straight off a tree.
They've got these big teeth that are just cropping devices. They just bite down on a branch and either take the whole branch or strip the leaves and needles off and then swallow it down.
To be able to digest this huge volume of food and grow big enough to avoid attack requires a stomach as large as a tongue. That's as big as a swimming pool, and it's filled with acid so concentrated it can dissolve iron.
I mean, it had to be able to hold maybe a ton or more of plant material at a time, and we're talking about something huge.
Surprisingly, it isn't something huge which allows these giant herbivores to grow big enough to be all but invincible. In fact, it's something incredibly small. And something meat-eaters lack. Below Sauroposeidon's stomach are two gigantic organs called cecum, similar to our appendix. Humans stopped using an appendix thousands of years ago when we started eating meat. A Sauroposeidon would die without one. The ceca are home to millions of microscopic organisms. They break down the tough, fibrous walls of plant cells.
It has this whole little world inside of microbes that's helping it digest its food. That's end-in, little tendrils that help break open those cell walls, help liberate those nutrients, and that's what helps the animal survive.
And the result of this incredible feat of engineering is one final trick that keeps predators at bay.
Sauropods were probably burping and farting almost continuously, because that's what big plant eaters do. And they would have been noisy, smelly, unpleasant animals to be around.
Despite all these adaptations, all of this specialized biology that has allowed Sauroposeidon to grow to mammoth proportions, there's one part of its body that simply hasn't kept up. Its brain.
Animals like Sauroposeidon are really the poster child for the dumb dinosaur.
Sauroposeidon has a brain less than 1,000th of its body size, the equivalent of a human being with a brain the size of a pea. Lobes for both sight and smell are tiny. Areas controlling information analysis, learning, and complex thought are barely developed.
If you look at the size of their brain, you actually have to kind of wonder how these animals managed.
But they did manage. Physical size makes up for every other shortcoming. Surviving for 50 million years, these mammoth creatures spread out across the globe onto every continent except Antarctica. But there's another dinosaur that doesn't rely on size. It uses an even more unusual trick to stay alive. The most sophisticated communication system ever developed in the prehistoric world. It's one vegetarian that lacks any obvious weaponry. A Parasaurolophus is a duckbill. Named for its duck-like beak, weighing in at almost 4 tons, it's not tiny, but taking on a 7-ton predator like a T-Rex would be suicide.
They have no fangs, no armor at all, no spikes or horns anywhere in the body. They seem to be large, vulnerable targets.
Parasaurolophus range across a vast area, more than 160,000 square kilometers, from Alberta, Canada to New Mexico, a region with more than its fair share of vicious predators.
What has puzzled all of us is, how did they protect themselves?
The most important clue to this mystery is buried inside their skull. Parasaurolophus has the biggest brain of all herbivores, and one part of that brain is abnormally large, the area responsible for hearing and interpreting sounds. It's called the auditory cortex.
What was a surprise is the higher centers of their brain are very large and suggest that something very different is going on in Parasaurolophus and its kin than in most other of these plant-eating dinosaurs.
But how does an advanced auditory cortex help a Parasaurolophus defend itself against monster carnivores? First of all, its acute hearing can detect an approaching predator from kilometers away. Then, most importantly, it can react, deploying an unusual weapon. A distinctive sound that originates deep inside a strangely shaped head crest. The crest contains the animal's nasal cavity, a tube that loops around twice, creating a chamber 2.5 meters long. Calls, vibrations originating in the voice box, travel along these tubes. Like the chambers of a trombone, those tubes amplify and lower that sound. The result, an extremely low-frequency hum, even deeper than a foghorn.
Each species has its own distinct shape. Each species would have its own distinct sound.
The arrangement of the chambers inside each animal is unique, and the sound they create is like a fingerprint. These calls are Parasaurolophus' primary form of defense. They're communicative social beings that live in herds. Parasaurolophus have learned there's safety in numbers.
An isolated Parasaurolophus would be a dinosaur in trouble. It's gonna have to look out for predators on its own, and therefore, a lone individual might do its call to say, I'm alone, and wait to hear for other members of its herd to make the corresponding call.
This tactic is still used today on the plains of Africa.
If you look at various species of plant eaters, they live together in groups, and if one of them spots a predator, they can whinny or hoot and let the rest of the herd know so that they can keep on alert, or if the predators are right there, they can all break out into a run and run away from the attacker.
Parasaurolophus' ability to communicate complex messages is a tremendous defensive advantage. Using its sensitive hearing, these creatures can detect a predator far off in the distance. They send out an alarm call to warn the herd. And even more effective, low-frequency sounds with their long wavelengths travel much further than higher frequencies.
These are kinds of sounds that can be transmitted over very long distances.
This extremely low-frequency sound is called infrasound and can travel for kilometers.
You can produce a noise so low and so deep, it not only goes through the air, it goes through the rocks and through the soil, and you pick it up in your feet. Elephants do that, rhinos do that, hippos do that, crocodiles do that, alligators do it. They produce infrasound.
But for a Parasaurolophus, these calls can be used for more than just communication. Low-frequency infrasound can put up an aggressive form of defense.
Infrasound is a weapon. You can scramble the brains of your enemy with a blast of infrasound. If you have 100 duckbills, 1,000 duckbills facing the same direction, producing high decibel sounds, that's a wave of energy that could knock over a predator or at least discombobulate it, scramble its brains.
Despite holding a deafening secret weapon, the Parasaurolophus, like other plant eaters, knows that the best way to stay alive is to keep predators at a distance. But in this prehistoric world, giant carnivores with ultra-keen sensors and powerful laser weaponry are everywhere. Throughout the Cretaceous, hungry carnivores patrol the landscape. They're the most terrifying predators the world has ever known. Their plant-eating prey, though, are well-armed and well-armored. They don't give in without a fight. But prehistoric herbivores have a problem. They lack the brain power of the carnivores that hunt them. Sauroposeidon's brain is so tiny, it can barely process any information at all. So just how did these intellectually challenged giants cope in such a dangerous world?
There has to be some sort of device that compensated for this diminished capacity to make individual choice. And it's got to be society.
Sauroposeidon defend themselves against super predators by working and thinking together.
So you have group intelligence, group memory, group decision-making, replacing individuality.
Living as a group is vital for Sauroposeidon's survival. Individually, their huge size is a powerful defense, but sticking together makes these leviathans almost indestructible. Keeping a herd of 50-ton animals filled up, however, means traveling vast distances. Grazing territory covering thousands of square kilometers and moving a mountain of flesh requires sophisticated coordination.
One of the curious things about sauropods is that they did have a swelling in the spinal cord in the neighborhood of their pelvis. This was sort of like a second brain to help control the back half of the body.
It's called the sacrolumbar expansion, a bundle of nerves which acts like a primitive brain controlling the movements of the legs and tail. The brain in a Sauroposeidon's head is simply too small and far away to coordinate its front and back legs, so a second brain operates the back end of the animal.
The reasons why animals like Sauroposeidon have an enlargement in their hip is because there's actually a lot going on back there. there are lots of muscles that are in the legs and also muscles that are going through the tail.
The primitive brain in its pelvis keeps Sauroposeidon's legs and tail in sync with its body. Without it, they could never have grazed over such large territories, and possibly they wouldn't have even been able to walk at all. This tiny bundle of nerves, weighing just a few grams, allows herds of Sauroposeidon to rule the Great Plains of the southern Midwest of America for almost 15 million years. Another plant eater couldn't appear more different. It's small, weak, and highly intelligent. But like Sauroposeidon, Parasaurolophus live in herds. They stick together and are constantly on the lookout for threats. But for Parasaurolophus, there's a problem. Their eyes are on the side of their head, so fields of vision don't overlap. This leaves a blind spot straight ahead, a possible opening for an attacker.
They couldn't see directly behind themselves, and they actually would have problems seeing directly in front of themselves.
It's almost a different visual world than one that we can imagine.
The Parasaurolophus have a solution to this problem.
When you've got multiple Parasaurolophus living together, that means multiple eyes to scan the horizon. And if one of you is feeding, munching on the plants on the ground, the other can keep its eyes out, looking around, keeping an eye out for a tyrannosaur.
But not all plant eaters in the Cretaceous live as a group. Ankylosaurus are loners. They depend on a powerful tail club and steel-like body armor to defend themselves. Without the herd to watch your back, Ankylosaurus has to watch its own. That's a job made even harder as its worst enemy, T-Rex, can hunt under the cover of darkness. Fortunately, an Ankylosaurus has another effective weapon in its armory, a highly refined sense of smell.
The nasal region of Ankylosaurus and its kin is one of the most specialized parts of its anatomy.
For an Ankylosaurus, a T-Rex's distinctive odor is a dead giveaway.
This is an animal for whom the sense of smell was more important, potentially, than the sense of vision.
Ankylosaurus nasal passages wind through the skull, significantly increasing their surface area. This enlarged space is populated by millions of odor receptors.
Complicated, crazy straw, tortuous nasal passageway that went from the nostrils, made several loops through the snout before it went down into the throat.
Ankylosaurus' super-sensitive nose can pick up a carnivore over 3 kilometers away.
If it could smell a Tyrannosaurus coming, it's got an early warning, and so it can begin to react appropriately.
For a hungry T-Rex, it means a meal has simply vanished into thin air. Never underestimate a vegetarian. Parasaurolophus and Sauroposeidon rely on the numbers to spot predators before they attack. Ankylosaurus has an armory of sensors to keep carnivores at bay. But no matter how clever a herbivore may be, or how many tools they have at the ready, sometimes their time is up. For herbivores, keeping one step ahead of the competition is a never-ending struggle.
T-Rex was designed by natural selection to overcome those formidable defenses.
Under the cover of darkness, a Tyrannosaurus Rex is on the hunt. Its prey is Triceratops. 6 tons of muscle loaded with deadly defensive weapons, all mounted on an armored skull that can turn instantly. But Triceratops has one major disadvantage. Its night vision is no match for a tyrannosaur. T-Rex goes for the kill. Even so, taking on a healthy adult Triceratops is a huge risk. That is, if a T-Rex is acting alone.
Probably the only way a T-Rex could successfully and safely bring down Triceratops is by having at least one other individual Tyrannosaur that would ambush it from the back while the one in front is keeping the attention of the Triceratops.
Working as a team, the ultimate carnivore delivers a killing blow. For the T-Rex, it's a veritable feast. This battle plays out over and over again, sparking evolutionary changes in carnivores, which in turn challenges plant eaters.
You can look at it as sort of almost an arms race between the herbivores and the carnivores. And the herbivores protect themselves. The carnivores change in order to attack and be able to have enough power to kill the herbivores.
The arms race between predator and prey continues for millions of years. Carnivores developed some of the most effective killing tools seen in Earth's history. Prehistoric plant eaters evolved defenses simply unmatched today. Parasaurolophus with a call so powerful it's a dangerous weapon. Sauroposeidon, bigger than any land creature we'll ever see. Ankylosaurus, with a club for a tail and armor built like a bulletproof vest. And Triceratops, the big bruiser with a skull strong enough to stop the jaws of a T-Rex.
All these Cretaceous plant eaters with their complicated apparatus, they're all much more sophisticated. So we're beginning to understand that we woefully underestimated the inner and outer life of the Vegisaur.
Plant-eating dinosaurs became incredibly tough to survive from the Jurassic period to the Cretaceous, more than 165 million years. Even today, the battle between herbivores and carnivores rages on. But it's this brutal war for survival and constant adaptation that has created the incredible natural world that we live in today.